Alrighty, so this is Tuesday prep for Wednesday, October 27th. A little late because there's a lot of stuff to go over. So, to recap, DSS and WWR both acted exactly as I expected them to act. DSS repeated what they always do, which is on a large pop. It has a really nice and predictable fade. So, in this case, just as expected, it popped above the previous large support and didn't break above the previous put in smaller support, and algo identified the top right here, and anything in here is basically a short. So VWAP break, and then it popped back up to 725, and that was the start of the fade. And the next covers were suggested here, 560, 570, but then again it popped against this short-term support resistance, and you had a perfect pop at 650 for another reshort cover below 6. WWR was even simpler. It didn't have really any up and down moves. It just kind of went down. So both of them nice shorts. Going forward, the biggest focus for me on the safe side is SYNL. I actually did more research for this than usual. It's a low flow, so sometimes technical analysis is all that matters. But in this case, I decided to look more into it. Back on June 9th, the company actually released a press release against their now current CEO. This popped on the news that the new CEO, I guess, is wonderful. I mean, it's probably has nothing to do with that. It just, they released a PR and it popped. Obviously, we see it's in a downtrend. I put in the relevant sell-off lines on the large frame. So we have quite a lot of sell-off just below 6. There's a lot of overhead supply. All this needs to be cleared out, and we can see the negative amount of supply where everyone's basically underwater. That's what this technical indicator essentially looks at. And looking at the 5-minute, it's the same thing. You have a lot of volume in here, and that corresponds to a point of inflection. And even though it shot up, I'm not really looking at it that seriously because it's after hours, but there isn't any positive volume buying. So people aren't even creating new oversupply. They're still offloading whatever they had previously. So there's not enough buying for this thing to go. I think it's already dead in the water. We see the modified, adjusted balance. That's my own. A lot of the stuff is my own stuff. So for example, this is in the negative on the 5-minute, which basically means that there's not enough volume to get them to a positive net buy. And to go back, so this is crazy. On June 9th, the company, SYNL Corp.com, actually, quote, said, SYNL does not believe Mr. Hutter has been transparent and honest with SYNL shareholders. Mr. Hutter's role as a CFO of a real estate development firm does not qualify him to oversee SYNL's complex metals and specialty chemicals businesses. If the group continues to refuse to provide reliable details about Mr. Hutter, then SYNL believes shareholders should be gravely concerned about Mr. Hutter's true background and track record and actual performance. This is the guy that just became the CEO since the previous CEO retired. And that's crazy to me since the company themselves have basically said this guy is an idiot. Subsequently, over the last few months, they just happened to fire some people left and right, and they're crediting in their 10Q filings this to restructuring due to COVID and reducing the overhead. So this is just shady AF. I've never seen anything like this. Their 10Q filings are also identifying COVID-19 as being nearly devastating to them, and that they may have issues with further financing going forward. So really, for me, this company is a short only, and that's why SYNL is the safest short for tomorrow. The float is only 7.6 million, and over half of them are either insiders or institutions. So it's definitely a very low float, but there's no short volume to it because looking on the bigger time frame, since the beginning of October, shorts have most likely covered. This is a long time to hover in their same area, and you see the magnet divergence. A lot of shorts have covered. Bag holders are the only ones left, and they're gonna try to unload in any pops possible. So yeah, the sell-off could easily continue. My hope, looking at the bigger support lines that are longer lines, which is, for example, the next support resistance, the massive sell-off that happened at 6.51, and actually the one before that, I should mark this properly, at 5.9 area. So ideally this thing pops above 5.9, and anywhere in this area is a great short. I don't think I would even wait for this to go back down. I would just short it 620, 615, anywhere in here if it pops. And if it does not even reclaim this 5.9 area and starts moving in a trajectory downwards, 560, anything below these latest numbers, basically 570, is also short. Point is, fundamental, this company is trash, and they don't have enough volume to keep going because there are other tickers on the watch for tomorrow. So we're in the sell-off territory, and it's a short where it is right now, and it's definitely short if it breaks 5.5 area, and it's definitely short if it breaks above 5.9 and gets rejected, hopefully with some like long wicks. Obviously I would be looking for something like this on a 5-minute. I need to see a long wick. I need to see an immediate sell-off. I don't want it to linger above any of these lines, so pop and drop. So that's my main focus for the short. The next one is actually a two-way situation. SNMP. Algo is showing exhaustion levels, but these on the 5-minute are just suggestions, and for as long as the sequence counter is positively identifying bars, as you see there are no numbers under, this is still not a short. So yeah, get ready for a short, but it's not a short. So this is different. This is a 10 million float. It's also a low floater, of course, and half of it is institution, so it's really more like 5 million. But this one did trade the float 17 times the 30-day average at 9 million volume over 600,000 average. And on October 9th, it did something similar with only 5 million shares. But in this case, while it popped and dropped, the next day the volume went up to, what is this, 122 million almost, and it went crazy. It went 500% from where it opened. It opened here, it went all the way up, and then sold off above there. And it stayed above this level, so essentially created a flag. This is a bullish flag. This breakout is above the bullish flag regression line, so it's a valid bullish breakout. Doesn't have any news, but if it's the only thing that's active tomorrow, or the number one active stock, and we see the history of how it reacts, this could easily keep going forever. So I basically, I'm not looking at this just as a short. I'm looking at it a couple of different ways, because it also has shorts already underwater. So option A, which I don't think it happens, it gaps down or starts selling off. I'm sorry, if this gaps down or starts selling off closer to 1, so in the 5-minute, I would love to use EMAs. If it goes into the green EMA or the blue EMA, which is I think 20 and 50 period moving exponential moving averages, I would actually look, and then it holds or curls up around 1.05 cents. I would actually look to go long. I would also look for the volume. Right now it traded 9 million shares. I would need at least a third of that in the pre-market, so something like 2 to 3 million shares, and it not selling off. I think that's bullish. And we'd go long, and hopefully it would retest the previous highs. It's already at 1.4, so we see what it does at 1.6. Because this is the only selling volume, there's really no reason for people to sell again at this point. So if it hits 1.6, it's most likely going to hit close to 2, and if it hits close to 2, it's most likely going to go above 2. And that's where I would look to sell. My first exit would be basically $1.90, and then second exit is somewhere around 2. And then if it breaks down below the support, which is my most likely scenario, which I would call option C, so it's not just a long, but it also breaks down support, then we're shorting it. So I would locate a couple thousand shares or several thousand shares for a short in the morning. We'll ride this thing up to above 2, and then ideally short it on the break below 2 and add full size below VWAP break, maybe around 1.7 is where the VWAP would be if this goes to somewhere above $2. So SNMP could be the biggest runner for the day. A lot of chat rooms are actually talking about it too. I have at least 3 chat rooms that it's identified in. So yeah, this could run. The volume was small today. It could repeat what it did before and sell off massively above $2. And really, because of the action today, the S&P being negative, there aren't really many other runners. A few others, actually DGLY, I'm just pulling up a 5-minute chart because the daily, you can look it up yourself. I was actually long, and I sold into this volume pop that I wasn't sure what was happening with it, and it immediately kept going. And then the news came out that the reason why it's gone up is because of the riots. So the riots actually started on Friday. So I started buying here, and I added here on this big buy wick because of the riots. And I waited 2 days, nothing happened, and I'm thinking, the volume is staying there, I gotta get out. And then of course, yeah, on lower, after the volume accumulated, you see the big yellow volume situation here, it just popped. And this could run, but I don't think I'll be running with it. I'll stay with the BLM name that I like more, the UONE. They're a financial institution. Bank of America actually invested $100 million in them, so it's like you have the same low float potential of running, but the difference here is this is a real company versus DGLY is, yeah, it's a real company, but it doesn't have any new news, and it's not producing groundbreaking products. They basically make drones. So yeah, it's good for protests, but I don't think it's as good as what the Wall Street wants to do. They want to say we support Black Lives Matter, and we run on that sentiment, and they actually invest in BLM stocks rather than secondary or tertiary options. So yeah, I'll be looking at DGLY, and then of course I'll be paying attention to Mara, and you can see what it did on the daily. When BTC last popped to 12,000, this went from less than $1 to $5 because of a short squeeze. It sold off, and I'm sure there was covering when the moving average crisscrossed, and now it's running again. And if you pay attention, there are actually really large wicks. So now when this thing is dipping, people are buying it up. So there's a good amount of shorts in here. BTC is actually higher than what it was here. You do have sell-off volume, but that still leaves them a pretty good amount to go. So I have I have alerts set up that if it goes above 294 to actually go long, if it breaks 294, breaks down and then breaks up again, or doesn't break down, I actually want to go long. The short thesis will be there, but not until maybe 3:30, because I'm not worried about this overhead supply. If you look at my overhead supply indicator, some other shorts that I short, they're like 10 to 1. This is 2.5 to 17, so we're not there. And just recently, even in after hours, it was close to 7 to 16, so it's more like 3 to 1. So there's not that much new overhead supply. So I really want to go up a little higher, and I don't want to sell off into this overhead supply. I want it to retest it and pop above there, and then I want to short below 330 when it goes there. My assumption is because of BTC it should go there, but again, my focus is not going to be on this one. This is something that I'll be watching on a watch list. The main focus is SYNL easy short and SNMP long, and then short on the way down. Mara and RIOT are based on BTC. If it keeps going up, I might go with it or I'll short. And then DGLY is on a short watch, as explained previously. And I do have to mention, last but not least, because of volume pops that my algo found in WEI, that means that China financial low float stocks could still be back on the radar. So I'll be watching WEI and JFU just in case. So I think I'll put them, actually put them on the watch list so I don't miss it. But bam, WEI, they have a bunch of shorts. They had a nice little poppity pop. They dropped. They didn't clear a regression line, but they are in the midpoint. So they're kind of like, they could go, algo identified exhaustion in, and then, well, yeah, basically this is a short you would follow, since this is where the bullish numbers are gone. You see number 1 right there, so you would short around there. But then we have identified long and the numbers disappear, so very likely that it is actually going to go long. So yeah, it's a decent pop, most likely short covering, but something to look after is the massive overhead supply. There's practically no buying anymore, but then again, it's after hours, so it's kind of hard to gauge. This is still during hours. We're looking at 3.3 to 16, so like a 5 to 1 ratio. Again, I usually look for like a 10 to 1 ratio for a safe short, so tough to say. Again, from a technical analysis, one last thing to pay attention to, the number 47, that calculates how crazy volatile this thing is. And usually I trade into 5 to 15s. 47 is insane, and their overall on balance volume never really went down. So on a larger time scale, they still have buying the entire time. So the amount of people that bought, shorted, and covered created a net positive amount. So the question is, how many overhead shorts are stuck right now? And actually, based on these wicks coming down and closures, this is another good line to watch. And then on the 5 minute, we have a little more clarity on what we should pay attention to and whether or not it clears this 312 line. So it's a little longer, but it is what it is. You can skip around. All right.